Hey, what is going on, my fellow Godlies? This is Vance from Ryan, and of course, Warframe God Builds, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Pixie CC Queen, Titania. Now, Titania's pieces can be picked up through the most annoying mission I've ever played in Warframe, and that's the Silver Grove. I'm not exaggerating. Seriously, the entirety of this mission has you scanning flowers. Really, if I wanted to go sightseeing, I think I'd go play Abzu. Anyway, Titania is one of those Warframes that you just can't pass up. She's so unique and brings a lot of different features that Warframe has never seen before to the table. Now, it goes without saying that Space Barbie is very important to me, and Digital Extremes knocked the ball out of the park with this one because I was able to dress up Titania like the Blair Witch, and thus my trailer was dark and foreboding and hell of a lot of fun to do. So I gotta congratulate DE for yet another successful entry into the Warframes. Titania is warmly welcomed. So without tooting Titania's horn any further, let's take a look at her abilities, shall we? Now, first off, I gotta say that Spellbind is one of the best first abilities in the game. It makes it so enemies float just like a Vauban's Bastille, and on top of that, it's going to positively benefit allies that are in proximity of the enemies you cast this upon. Vice versa, it holds true. If you cast it on allies, then it's going to negatively affect enemies in nearby range. What Spellbind does exactly is, on top of making enemies float, which is an extremely useful CC tool, it also makes them fumble their weapons. So it's also like a Loki's Disarm. Wow, fucking incredible for a first ability, don't you agree? Now, her next ability, Tribute, is going to be very difficult to talk about because you have different buffs that you can get from this power being cast. There's first Dust, then Thorns, Entangle, and Full Moon. The Dust Aura reduces an accuracy of enemies within 30 meters around Titania by 10% for 120 seconds. Each additional stacks will increase effect by 10%, up to a maximum of 50% reduce enemy accuracy. The Thorns Aura, on the other hand, will reflect 5% of the damage taken by the attacker up to 40 meters away for 120 seconds. Each additional stack will increase the effect by 5% to a maximum of 25% damage reflection. Any allies within 35 meters around Titania will also benefit from Thorn's damage reflection. The Entangle Aura slows down enemy movement within 10 meters around Titania by 5% for 120 seconds. Each additional stack will increase the effect by 5% up to a maximum of 25% slower enemy movement. Lastly, the Full Moon Aura increases the damage for companions dealt by 15% for 90 seconds. Each additional stack will increase the effect by 50% up to the maximum of 75% increased companion damage. Any teammates within 30 meters around Titania will also benefit from Full Moon's effects, increasing their respective companions' damage. Now, Titania's next ability, Lantern, functions very similar to a Loki's Decoy, other than the fact that you can volleyball it around the map and watch very entertainingly as enemies are drawn to it as they're shooting, and then it'll eventually explode, causing damage to enemies nearby it. This is absolutely hilarious to watch in action because it's pretty much a bug zapper. Now, Titania's last ability, Razorwing, was what the community was so hyped up about initially. It's because Titania shrinks down to a fraction of her original size, becoming a flying pixie. In this form, Titania permanently remains in midair using the original Archwing control mechanics to move around the battlefield. She exchanges her normal weapons for two proprietary Razorwing weapons, the Dual Pixia, machine gun pistols, and the DeWitta, heavy sword, both of which deal 50 to 80 to 120 to 160 base damage per hit, and whose stats are affected by mods equipped on her primary and melee weapons respectively. Titania also gains a passive 50% evasion against enemy attacks. With mechanics like these, one could accurately assume that it's going to be pretty impossible to build for her, but rest assured, we found a way. Prime Continuity, Natural Talent, Streamline, Stretch, Vitality, Fleeting Expertise, Overextended, Prime Flow, Steel Charge, and Toxic Flight all contribute to what I believe to be Titania's God build. Now, the reason why I've got Steel Charge here in place of anything else is because it's going to help with the melee weapon that we use, in tangent with the fact that it's probably going to carry over to the Archwing ability if you choose to use it. Stretch and overextended are going to make sure we affect the mass amount of enemies, making them float in the air, and also helping out our teammates. She can accurately replace a Vauban in a lot of CC situations, specifically because we have the range that we do. It's already cheap as hell to cast her abilities, but why not go with Fleeting Expertise and Streamline? That way you can spam it that much more. The only mod that doesn't really fit here in this combination is Toxic Flight, and that's specifically because it's a preference mod and it just helps me get around a whole lot more. If you wanted to, you could take this out and then take out the Steel Charge and then include the Exilus or the Aura of your choice. Now for primary weapons, I chose to rock the Vaykor Hek. This build was shown in the Chroma build video, however, it has received a little bit of updates since then, so I'll give you a moment to look over the mods that we used. But we're using it specifically because it does a lot of damage, it gives us our health back, and it's also going to transfer all the mod damage over to our Razor Wing when we choose to use it. Now for secondaries, I chose to test out the new Pox that were recently just added to the game, and I've got to say, I was pleasantly surprised at the fact that these are totally in-game viable. I was totally not suspecting miniature handheld Taurids to do the amount of damage they do, and thus that's why I included it in the setup. You may not resort to your secondaries all that often, but I can guarantee you that if you do, you're going to be very satisfied with these Pox. It has my seal of approval. When it comes to melee weapons, I've been wanting to check out the Lesion for a while now, and what better time than during the Titania God builds, because, let's be honest here, the Lesion kinda looks like a broomstick. And what's a witch without a broomstick? All the fun and games aside, Lesion is a serious weapon, and it does a lot of damage over a small amount of time, meaning that it's one of the highest DPS rated weapons in the game. So you would be smart to include this build just as I have. For companions, it should be no surprise why I'm once again resorting to Genocide my Smeeta Kavat. As we discussed earlier, one of her abilities grants her a buff, and that buff gives our companions additional damage. Now when you take into consideration the fact that we've got a maxed out Maul and a maxed out Bite, chances are Genocide is going to be outperforming our Titania build. For lenses, I'm either going to recommend Xenuric, Vizarin, or Unero. I'm going to recommend Xenuric, of course, because of the energy overflow. I'm going to recommend Vizarin because of the New Moon passive, which allows you to instantly revive allies. And with Unero, it's more or less because I think of my Titania as a witch, and what better way to express how much of a witch we are by turning our enemies to stone once we melee them. So in conclusion, Titania brings a lot to the mix. She has a very well-rounded Warframe, but there's a few things that you need to be aware of. The fact that she doesn't mesh very well with Frost at all. Even though she's a CC queen, you would think that you would be able to make enemies float regardless of whether they're frozen or not. That's just not the case. Whereas Vauban can make pretty much anybody float, and thus he is best friends with Frost. Titania, however, according to lore, is married to Oberon. So if you enjoyed this video, like always, hit that like button, share to your friends on Facebook, share to your friends on Snapchat, share to your friends wherever your friends are. And until next time, peace.